What is going on, guys? You are watching Gunplay TV, and today on the channel we're taking a look at the Holosun HE-509T-RD red dot sight. Okay, and so for the remainder of the video, I suppose we'll keep it somewhat informal and we'll just call this the Holosun 509 because that is what regular people call this. All right, and so we'll go ahead and slide this out the package and begin the unboxing process. But as we know with Holosun, you typically get a few reticle options, and that's kind of what sets this apart from some of the options on the market. All right, so you get the 2 MOA red dot, and then in addition to that, you also have the option to run that 2 MOA red dot with a 32 MOA circle kind of EOTech style reticle around that. All right, and so as we begin this unboxing, we can see that, of course, we've got some literature. We will not be needing that for the day, so we'll put that aside. We've got a microfiber cleaning cloth. That's always nice to have. We also are going to have some hardware in here. My package is already open because I've already taken the sight out, tested it, and used it just a bit. All right, and so with that out the way, right, we've got the meat of the package here, right? We've got the Holosun 509 red dot there. We've also got a sight adjustment and removal tool, and this will also help you to remove that battery tray, which we'll take a look at here in a second. And then lastly, a nice addition with this particular optic is the inclusion of an RMR style plate. Now, we'll get into what firearm I'm going to be placing this on here in a bit, but I'm not actually going to be using this plate, so I'm going to put this back in the box, okay? And so we will slim this down to what exactly it is that we need, and we'll leave everything else out. All right, so now we've got all the extra frills out of the box and out of the way. We can take a look at the key components, right? Which essentially is going to be your Holosun red dot itself, okay? And so we'll take a look at this quickly, and then we'll go through some features. Essentially what makes this special, in addition to the fact that it is, well, a closed emitter red dot, right? We can see that we have a lens both on the front and on the rear here, right? So both the objective and ocular lenses are shrouded, if you will. But what that essentially means is that that emitter on the inside is not going to be exposed to any weather, any dust, any inclement conditions, right? So that emitter is basically sitting in a nice closed environment. All right, so now we've got everything out of the box that we don't need, right? And we've only kind of slimmed it down to what it is that we really need to look at today, right? Which essentially is going to be the optic itself, right? So this is the Holosun 509. That T in the nomenclature there is going to be for titanium, right? So that's probably the first thing that I would call out with this particular optic. In keeping with the Holosun Elite line, you typically are going to get either a green reticle or a titanium housing, right? And so this optic happens to have the red reticle with the titanium housing. They do make an option with both green reticle and titanium housing, which is available for sale. You can pick that up if you like, but I'm cool with the good old-fashioned red dot, okay? And so in addition to the fact that it is titanium in construction, right, you also are going to get both an ocular lens and an objective lens, right? And so essentially what that means is, well, this is a closed emitter red dot sight, okay? And so if water was to spill on this from the front, from the back, whether that's snow, water, mud, anything, right, it's essentially not going to make it into this housing and subsequently occlude or block your emitter, all right? So what that means is, despite the conditions, you should get good performance out of your optic. And so the reason that that's a talking point at all is because, you know, a lot of people will complain about, let's say, the Trijicon RMR or the Leopold Delta Point Pro, and they'd say that, hey, these are open emitter reflex style red dots, and a speck of mud, some grains of sand, droplet of water could get in front of that emitter and subsequently keep me from getting a sight picture through my optic, right? And so if you do have that fear, right, you'd probably find yourself looking at a closed emitter optic similar to this, or maybe even the Aimpoint Acro. Now, in addition to the fact that this is going to be closed emitter and titanium housed, Holosun, of course, isn't pulling any punches, and they have included a solar panel there on the top. So that's going to serve as a battery backup whenever you're out in the sun. That's going to pick up that sunlight and use that as the primary power source and kind of save some of that battery life. And then in addition, one of the features that this optic possesses out of the box is the ability to use that solar panel as kind of a light sensor, right? And so if it picks up that you're in a very bright area, that is going to increase the brightness of that dot so that you don't get that washed out by the surrounding environment. And adversely, right, if you're in a darker environment, it's going to dim that dot down a bit so that you don't get a whole lot of optic bloom or a giant red bloom in your optic picture, right? So that is nice. I know some people don't like to use that, but it is there out of the box, and it's always nice to have a battery backup. All right, and so while on the topic of battery and battery life and battery backup, we can see here that the Holosun 509 is utilizing a side-mounted battery tray, okay? So the only reason I call that out, a lot of the optics on the market, those from SIG, for example, many of those from Trijicon and other manufacturers are going to have typically a bottom mounted battery, right? And despite where the manufacturer may or may not place their battery, the key thing to note here is that it being mounted on the side here means that, well, you don't necessarily need to remove or unmount your red dot in order to swap that battery. Essentially, that means you don't necessarily need to lose your zero just because your battery's gone dead, right? And so that's a plus, kind of a feature in and of itself, but maybe something that some would overlook. I would call that out as a feature just because it's going to save you some time and having to re-zero your optic just for having taken it off and replace that battery once a year as we're supposed to, right? Now, while on the topic of that battery tray, I will also call out that the Holosun included multi-tool, if you will, right? One end is going to have that hex key on it. And the other end is going to have something of a flathead screwdriver, right? And so that flathead can be used to remove that battery tray and kind of pry it out so that you can make those changes. I won't do that here on video, but it's also going to be kind of a multi-purpose tool in the sense that it's going to be used to adjust your windage and your elevation adjustments as well for whenever you do need to, in fact, zero this optic. So before I get into actually placing this on its platform, which in fact will be this SIG P320 AXG Pro here on the right that we've seen previously on the channel, I'll kind of just do a quick rotation of the optic and kind of give you guys a rundown of the specs if you are interested, all right? And so we mentioned before, this is going to have a 2 MOA red dot, and it's going to also utilize a 32 MOA circle, kind of EOTech style reticle, right? So you got either or, you've got two options out of the box with this particular optic. We've already touched on the solar panel and what exactly that does, but it's essentially going to be used to kind of offset the usage of that CR1632 battery and kind of prevent you from running that battery too dry. Now, according to Holosun, you're going to get 50,000 hours of battery life out of this optic out of setting 6, okay? So that's pretty good performance. Holosun, I'll say, it has some of the better battery life out there on the market, okay? And they also are going to have a shake awake kind of wake up feature wherein if you sit this optic down, if you sit the platform down for a while, it's going to cut off, saving some of that battery. And the moment that you pick that up or kind of jostle that optic, even in the slightest, it's going to come right back on at the exact same setting and brightness that you left it at. So that's always nice. Okay, so speaking of brightness, out of the box, you are going to get 12 settings on this particular optic. 10 of those settings are going to be for daylight, and you're going to get 2 night vision brightness settings as well. So if you are a user that uses nods or aims passively under nods, this optic will serve you well, okay? Now, moving on to kind of the side mounted buttons here, right? We do have, I would call these multi-purpose, right? Of course, in addition to doing up in brightness and reduction in brightness there, you also are going to be able to either lock the optic in a particular mode, be that the automatic mode where it's going to automatically dim and reduce its brightness on its own, or you can lock it at a particular setting so that you don't necessarily bump into that button and dim your optic when you didn't really want to, right? So that's nice. Now, in closing, right, it is enclosed in a titanium housing. We've already touched on that. That's very nice, very durable, and Aaron Count over at Sage Dynamics has beat the hell out of these optics. And frankly, this and the Trigicon RMR, if I'm not mistaken, are the 2 most resilient red dots, right? So I would say you can rest easy in purchasing a Holosun 509 as far as durability goes. Now, in that same vein, Holosun is claiming that these are going to be waterproof, okay? So it is fully enclosed. I can see that they've sealed in that those lenses with glue or whatever type of adhesive to kind of prevent any ingress of water or dust, okay? And so all in all, it does seem to be a very well-built optic. We'll go ahead and throw it on our platform and see for ourselves. All right, guys, so before I go ahead and throw this on the AXG Pro here that we see on the table, I wanted to call out how Holosun has approached the mounting for this particular optic. Now, because it is a closed emitter red dot, we can't drive the screws through the top of the housing and down through the bottom as we would with maybe an RMR or maybe one of the SIG optics, a Leupold. Essentially, right, because it is closed, they've kind of had to take a proprietary mounting approach. And it's very similar to what you might see from a traditional rifle mount, but certainly a bit miniaturized to fit on a pistol platform, right? And so we can see that we've kind of got this bar here, right? And, you know, I mentioned that I'll keep my Trigicon RMR plate that was included by Holosun in the box. The reason I've done that is because, well, I've gone out and purchased a C&H Precision 509 plate. Okay, and so these are a bit lighter weight. They're very well made. And these guys are local to Georgia. All right, so if you're not already familiar with them, go ahead and check out C&H Precision. They make some great plates for your guns. All right, and so what we'll find is, and as I put this on, I'll do this off camera just to kind of keep YouTube happy, but essentially what'll happen is this this kind of Picatinny lug, or that bar there, is going to index naturally with the gap there in our mounting plate, okay? And then subsequently, similar to what you might do for a traditional rifle optic, you're gonna clamp that down there on the side and make sure that it's nice and tight against your plate, okay? So I just wanted to call that out. It is a proprietary mounting pattern, okay? And so oftentimes you'll either need to get a custom mill for your pistol, and that's probably going to insist or require you to get a custom plate as well, okay? And so these aren't going to necessarily fit the Holosun 507 RMR footprint. They will fit within that footprint, but you'll have to take an extra step of getting an optic plate similar to the one we see here.
A few moments later.
All right, guys, and so through the magic of YouTube and video editing, we've somehow got our Holosun 509T mounted atop our AXG Pro here, okay? And I've got to say, it fits very well. As far as aiming, very natural if you've ever used a red dot. I wouldn't say that there's any significant magnification or parallax with this particular optic. Now, that being said, right, depending on who you ask and the video that you watch, you will see individuals say that there's a slight magnification with this optic. If there is one, it is minuscule and potentially negligible, right? I'm not able to detect anything unless maybe I'm looking extremely hard, and I don't imagine that that's going to be a problem under duress or when stress shooting, okay? And so I think that this is still going to lend itself to a quick sight picture, and all in all, from what I've been able to see, this thing shoots accurately, okay? So there's that. Now, as far as aesthetics go, it is a bit boxy, but I find it works very well on this AXG Pro, right? The finish that they've used, that titanium finish, seems to match very well with that nitride finish that SIG is using. And that's part of the reason that I looked at this particular optic, because I wanted something that was A, durable, B, of course, reliable, kind of in keeping with that durability. I wanted it to look good, and I did want it to be closed emitter in design, all right? And so there's very few options on the market as far as closed emitter pistol red dots, all right? And it's something of a niche market, if you will, right? We've got the Aimpoint Acro, right? Significantly more expensive, but significantly less durable. Shout out to Sage Dynamics once more. We've got the Holosun 509T that we see here on the table, right? Very durable, a lot cheaper in price. And that's pretty much all there is on the market as far as what you might call name brand options. Now, Sig Sauer is actually working on a Sig Romeo 2 red dot, right? Which kind of transitions between an open reflex and enclosed reflex design. I was really hoping to get my hands on one of those for review, and if you'd like to see that, please go down in the comments and leave a comment just telling me that you'd like to see that. I've actually reached out to Sig Sauer in hopes of getting them to send me one of those just for review so I can compare that with the 509T that we have here, and I think that that'd make for a great comparison. But as of yet, those folks at Sig have not been so kind as to reach back out to me. So again, please head down to the comments if you want to see something like that. All right, so I think that's more or less going to wrap it up for the 509T, all right? So if you're used to Holosun, you might not consider this to be the most feature-packed optic, but if you're coming from something pretty standard like a Trijicon RMR, wherein you don't get a closed emitter, you don't necessarily get the ability to swap those reticles, right? You're gonna have some nice features out of the box with this, in addition to the fact that you've got a solar panel, you've got a side-mounted battery. It's really, you know what? I'm just gonna stop it right there and say there's really nothing to hate about this optic. It's not as ugly as the Aimpoint mailbox or the Acro. It's more durable than the Acro. It's as durable or comparably durable, if you will, with the Trijicon RMR, which essentially is the standard for pistol red dots. Really, I don't know what there is not to love. I got this, again, from C&H Precision. Once more, and I paid under $300 for this optic shipped. Now, that's not necessarily the everyday street price, but they were running a sale, and naturally I had to jump on that, right? So if you see one of these out and about and you're considering getting something for a pistol, right? Maybe that's a competition pistol such as this one, and you don't want to have the issue where maybe somehow you get a speck of dust or mud or droplet of water in front of your emitter right before you go to shoot that match or right before you draw to shoot that target. Well, this is a good option for you, all right? And so with all that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and get up out of here. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and take a moment, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and once more, leave a comment for Sig Sauer and the algorithm. And without further ado, I'm gone.